Okie dokie. Let's unmute the mics. What is up, everybody? Checking it out at the let's see who's in the chat. I see a couple of people in the chat. Thank you very much for joining me. I am running the show solo tonight. Brad has the day off. He's out there touching grass with family. It's nice to see everyone in the chat. We are simulcasting, as they say. Those are old radio terminologies on Twitter or X or Twix or however you want to call it. And the YouTubes here at the Scarif Podcast. I am Ro, and thank you for joining us tonight on our regular scheduled Scarif Live. We have a couple of guests backstage, and we're going to be talking about Acolyte. Let's see. I always like to see who is first. Let's see. Keith Jason is first. Captain Wrecked is second. Thank you guys for coming on by. Comics and Cosmetics. Thank you very much. Danny, another one of our wonderful Red 5 Network podcasts, Comics and Cosmetics. If you are not following her, please do so and give her some shit because she deserves it. Yes, absolutely. Ubaldo, buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches, whenever it is that you are watching the show. Thank you for coming by. And yeah, it's been it's been an interesting ride. Jedi of Chicago, what is up? How you doing? Last week, Brad and I got on here and we I want to say that I was a little off. I have not, both Brad and I have not really been too excited to talk about the Acolyte. We've got our issues with it. I'm going to try to put those on the shelf a little bit because I want to give our guests tonight an opportunity to, I'm not sure exactly like, where they stand on the series, but I don't want to, poo on their parade if they are super excited about it. Obviously Brad and I wanted to be super excited about it before the show released the trailers and some of the, there was a leaked trailer from one of the celebrations. We were very excited. And as you know, I am super excited when I see new Star Wars, especially the trailers made it seem like it was going to be dark and moody, and that's how I like my Star Wars, dark and moody. So I was very excited to start on this journey. But we are more than halfway through, and we still have questions. We'll see how this series pans out. There's been some issues that Brad and I talked about last week. I am not even going to put the review for last week's episode in the audio feeds because I felt so completely out of it. Wasn't too happy with our conversation. It just really threw me off. I have watched this second part. We're going to talk a little bit about why it seems like they are cutting these episodes in half and then, waiting a week to show us the rest of it. The last two episodes, Night and Day, or Day and Night, obviously in that order, seems like they were split in two half-hour episodes. Hate when they do that. I'm not sure what the reasoning is other than, we have an 8-episode slot and we really only have material for, 4 or 5 episodes. I don't know what they're doing, but anyways, we'll definitely talk about that. Let's see who else has showed up. Dave's Dimension, thank you very much. And let's see, Comics and Cosmetics. I do deserve all the shits, don't I? Yes, I do. But yeah, if you want to tackle coming on the show, and then we got what, 3 episodes left on this series. I would love to have some more guests come on by and talk to us about what they love, what they don't love about the show, and Star Wars in particular. So we always love talking a little Star Wars here and there. Next week, a couple of announcements, I guess. Next week, Dave from What Does Star Wars Mean to You? We got together. We talked about we started a new series, or we started a new series called Scarif Cafe, and they are quick, half hour, 30-minute quick episodes, and they're really fascinating. Our first topic is if you guys ever had a feeling like a loved one or a family member was hurt. You wake up in the middle of the night and you feel like something is happening to your family far off. I asked the question to Dave, is that the Force? Is that the connection that Yoda talks about? We're all connected. Is that the Force in real life? So we kind of dove into that aspect of the conversation of the Force. So look for that episode next week. Brad and I have a couple of episodes that we are prepping for. A very interesting episode where we actually get together with a psychiatrist and we talk about Anakin Skywalker and all the, what do you call it, the 4 pillars of the dark side, as Anakin, transforms from light to dark. So that should be a very interesting deep dive that we're going to get into. And then we are prepping our 200th episode. We have a contest on our Twitters, the pinned tweet. If anybody would be interested, I don't know, in winning a PlayStation 4, Brad is donating a PlayStation 4 with some awesome games. I'll probably throw in a few games in there as well, but we're going to be announcing the winner of that contest during our 200th episode. And holy shnikey, it's been 200 episodes of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Thank you, everyone that has supported our trek through the stars. Not to use another franchise's little theme there, but yeah, it's been a wonderful experience, hanging out with fellow nerds and talking a little Star Wars with folks both in the Red 5 network and outside of the Red 5 network. It's really been fantastic. All right, we are going to be talking about the Acolyte with some friends. I've got Ray Richards and Obi-Shawn from the Force Dyad. We're going to push a couple of buttons. I'm going to refill my drink, and let's get down to business, shall we?
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
And that is true. This station is the most powerful station. Obi-Shawn from Force Dyad and Ray Richards, thank you guys for joining me on this edition of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Scarif Live, Saturday night. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Doing great. How are you?
Very well.
Excellent. It's good to see you guys, and thank you for answering the call to come on by and talk a little Star Wars. It's been quite an experience being on social media and kind of reading everybody's take on the Acolyte. Earlier before the break, I said that Brad and I were really excited about this series, dark and moody. I like when Star Wars kind of takes its own material seriously. And I wanted to ask you guys, before the series dropped, what were your thoughts going into the series before anything? I'll go with Shawn first.
Yeah, so I was super hyped actually going into it. I've been reading the High Republic stuff, the books, the comics, since 2021. And so, yeah, when they were like, oh yeah, this is gonna be set in the High Republic, I was super stoked. And the trailers did such a good job, I think, of kind of painting that excitement, kind of like you said, the tone being more foreboding than some of the other Star Wars stuff we've gotten so far. And yeah, I mean, I was excited. And then yeah, it's it has been slightly disappointing as someone who's a big High Republic fan, and I'll kind of touch on that a little bit, I guess, a little bit, as we go through this, but it hasn't, you could, if you didn't tell me it was in the High Republic, you wouldn't know,
right.
outside of their tunic colors. Nothing about it feels tied into the stories that we've gotten so far, to the point that they even forgot about the Nihil, the Drengir, in the opening crawl that we got on episode 1. So yeah, it's for being up here where I was like going into it, it's kind of knocked me down a bit, unfortunately.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And we'll ask you that. I only read a book and a half of the High Republic stuff when it first came out. Wasn't too impressed. But we'll definitely touch on that, because I do want to ask you a little bit about what your thoughts are on that. Ray Richards, your thoughts going into this series?
Yeah, so I have not read the High Republic. I got the audio book for the first book, and got about halfway through it. Was not really enthused with the narrator, so I kind of dropped it. Nothing about the story really turned me off, but I was excited about seeing something that wasn't tied to the Skywalker saga, but involved Jedi. It was not by Favreau or Filoni, really. I have some issues with some of the way that they structure their shows. And of course, Filoni now has his own, saga, basically, that he's built with Rebels and Ahsoka and all this stuff. So I was excited about that. And as you guys said, I mean, it was pitched as something darker, something, very related with the Sith. It was going to show us about the Sith. It was going to go into that. And I will just say that although I have been disappointed in the show, I am happy that I'm here for this episode and not for last episode, because when you asked me if I wanted to come on, it was before episode 5 had aired, and I was like, oh boy, I was like, if it's just as bad as the 4th one, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so at least I felt like it was a step up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's how I felt last week talking about the episode. It was a little disheartening. And Ray, you and I have had conversations online regarding short Star Wars episodes. The fact that it's mind-boggling how every other streaming show can stick to a 45 to 50-minute format, and then you've got these Star Wars shows that are supposed to be grander than grandiose here. It's Star Wars, for heaven's sake. 27 minutes, 28 minutes. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, and like you said, at the opening, I mean, very clearly, episode 4 and 5 were one episode. Yeah. Like the fact you can go back to the bugs. I mean, the bugs are, if you watch this episode 4, you're like, why are the bugs there? Episode 5 pays it off, and all that. It's structured as one episode. They just split it in half, probably so that they could tease out 4 episodes and then have the cliffhanger. So that episode might have come in at 45 minutes, maybe, right? A regular sort of broadcast TV episode length. But you're absolutely right. I don't understand why. I mean, the amount of money per minute they must be pumping into these shows, aside from Andor, I'll say, is amazing. And considering how you can watch it and then say, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Like, why are we so light on the character stuff? Like, what's actually happening in these shows? We're spending all this money. That's what, I don't know, what confuses me, I guess, about a lot of this content.
Yeah, sure. And, when we first started talking about the Acolyte, obviously the one thing that really hits us first, and for me especially, because I'm a visual person, I love the visual aspect of Star Wars. One thing that we did complain when we were talking about Book of Boba Fett, a little bit with Ahsoka, not as much. Obi-Wan Kenobi, obviously, also was the fact that it kind of looked cheap. This does not look cheap from the visuals, from my perspective. It looks really great. There are some really great effects in it. The soundtrack is fantastic. So it looks and feels like a Star Wars, but obviously there's some issues that we need to kind of go through. So far we are 5 episodes in. We've got 3 episodes left. Are there any episodes so far that have been your favorites? Like, oh, this is great, and then all of a sudden, obviously we're getting into some discourse here, but what have been your breakout favorites, maybe that surprised you guys? Sean?
Yeah. So as far as like the episodes themselves, it's probably got to be this one. Episode 5, I think, so far has been the best of the 5. Because we finally kind of get that big payoff that we've been building to, that I think maybe we thought we might get a little bit earlier, so that we could get more expanse on kind of the darker side of things. But as far as standout, I mean, I love Soul's character. The amount of development, and I guess the reason, my theory now is why they didn't develop anybody else is because of what happened in episode 5, right? They didn't see the need to develop them because they were just going to murk them all. But yeah, Soul's character, the depth of his emotion, the fact that he learned English,
Right.
the actor learned English for this role is incredible. And I think he brings a depth to his character that I don't really get from anybody else, even before this episode. And with May and Osha being, and I kind of tweeted about this week, was I feel like we're supposed to feel for them or care about them, and it hasn't done the best job of really getting the viewer to latch onto that story yet. And you're 60% of the way through the series.
It's hard when you have a character like Osha who's trying to leave the show. Like she's like trying to peace out of the show, and you're like, why do I care about what you're doing if you don't even want to be here as a character, really? Like that's sort of confusing to me as they rate the characters. Like it's hard to latch on to some of this because of kind of even the decisions they make, or the way that they are. I don't know.
Yeah, and Sean, you mentioned the fact that you think that they didn't really need to develop these characters, and I feel like if that was a conscious choice, I think that was a bad choice, because this episode, there's so many of the characters that were, they're background characters, and then some of the foreground characters, they died, but I really didn't care about them. Mm-hmm. I could care less. You've got some fancy moves with lightsaber battles in this, which were great, but it was like empty calories, really.
Yeah, and the thing about it too is, with a show like this, that's Ray, you said it earlier, that's coming into a brand new era that has no affiliation to anything, right? You need that hook, you need that buy-in, and the characters are obviously the easiest way to do that, right? Have you care about the people that you're watching, and it just hasn't done that in a way that I would have expected. Again, 5 episodes in, and maybe it's because they've got that inconsistency in episode length. I feel like they could have stretched some of the episodes to add a little bit more depth to the characters. Right. Between 4 and 5, the fact that they cut out the Kelnaka and the Stranger fight, and I don't know why, but they could have easily put that in and then extended episode 5, like cascaded that into episode 5, and you would have 2 longer episodes. Like, I don't know, it's the character direction outside of Soul and Chimere, I guess, to this point too, has been very interesting.
Yeah. Before we get too far into it, Ray, I wanted to ask you if you've had a favorite episode and what that episode is.
Yeah, so I tend with these Star Wars shows, I think I give it about 4 episodes, and then I'm at if I haven't been hooked, you have about the 5th episode before I have to make a decision of whether or not I'm really going to be on board. This show Acolyte's been the opposite of what Ahsoka was for me, because I was kind of on board Ahsoka until I hit episode 5, and then it kind of got off for me. I was like, wait a minute, I was kind of confused about what the storytelling was trying to tell me. And this show has been a little bit of the opposite. So I would say episode 5 probably is my favorite so far. But I think, Torben, I thought Torben's sort of him floating and meditating, and that was a very cool thing to see. And I thought it was interesting that they added it. I wish it had been contextualized a little better. A lot of this, I think, is difficult because they're making it a mystery. And I think the back half, these starting with episode 5, the back half is where you're going to find a lot of answers that maybe then make the first couple episodes seem better. In a way, maybe they should have dropped them all at once so that we could have watched the whole story. Because it seems to me the way it's structured, it's difficult to really get into it over the first couple episodes. But anyway, episode 5 to me is obviously the My
Yeah,
favorite.
and that's interesting too, because I also said, I wonder if we would look at this series a little different if all the episodes were dropped at once, almost like, watching a movie, because we would get the context of what these characters are deciding to do, what the actions are. But it's funny though, because I said, in a way, I think it would help it, but in a way, the writing seems a little clumsy, that I don't think it would help, because I feel like the writing is a little on the clumsy side. One of the things that really bothers me about these shows when it comes to character development or the lack thereof is the actions that characters take. If they are, as a writer, obviously you have to set up, what are these characters all about? What would they do? What wouldn't they do? And then kind of stick to that formula, because the audience, as you're watching this week in and week out, it has to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, then your brain tells you like what's going on and you become disinterested. And I feel like that's happening a lot, especially with May and Osha. And really with May more so than anybody else. I was just about to start to like Yord and
Jackie.
Jackie, yeah.
They started to become, interesting, but I feel like you're right, Sean. It seems like, within these 30-minute episodes or these short episodes, there should be some scenes where they talk about themselves to develop the characters for us to like them more. And it's weird that they don't. Yord gets his neck snapped and I could care less. It's like, who cares?
Well, one of the things I found interesting was with Osha and Jackie. If they wanted those characters to be friends and they wanted that to mean something, Jackie's death's going to mean something to Saul, and they do enough setup of that you kind of understand it, right? But if it's supposed to mean something to Osha as well, the idea of having an ex-Padawan and a current Padawan interacting is by itself interesting to us as Star Wars fans. What does it mean? Are they jealous? Are they not jealous? Is Soul different now? Is he not different? Like how does that work? And we didn't get any of that. And we could have gotten 10 minutes, sprinkled throughout the 4 episodes of their relationship building. And we just got like little hints of stuff that didn't build up enough, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I'm going to make a comment regarding Dave Richards' comment here on screen. All the mystery boxes are getting frustrated. I feel like they threw in so many mystery boxes to keep us distracted, and the people are saying, "Ooh, that reveal that Kim." How do you pronounce his name? Chimere.
Is it Smilo Ren or Darth Biceps now? I don't know which one it is, but
either one will work.
What about Swolo Ren? You could combine them.
I like Swolo Ren. That's nice too.
You would, Ray. But it's funny. Everybody's saying like, "Ooh, that reveal is so mysterious." I mean, like, no, it wasn't. I mean, we all guessed it in like the first or second episode. So when he comes in floating and, ooh, who could it be? Who else could it be? And then his mask comes off and then he does this little slow-mo, look up at the camera. And it's like, yeah, that's who we thought it was. So it was, I mentioned something on Twitter this morning that it just seemed very anticlimactic. And again, they're throwing in all these mystery boxes to distract you. And, sometimes we look at these mystery boxes and say, well, that is so obvious. Is it because they're tricking us? It can't be that obvious. But I think in this case, it was, or it has been. And I'm not sure if throwing mystery boxes at you to distract you is a good substitute for just having a really well-written, solid story and present it in a way that will surprise your audience, keep them guessing, and not become disinterested in the characters, the scenario, and the story. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's happening.
I mean, I question whether I think we're at the point within the show, or the show is kind of giving us that we don't know what's a mystery box and what's supposed to be a mystery box. Like
Right.
I thought that at first you think it's going to be, are there twins? We don't know they're twins, right? Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, nope, we know they're twins. Everybody
Right.
knows there's twins. Okay, that wasn't a mystery box. Then it's like, Kamir's doing all his fancy, things in episode 2 that you're like, all right, well, that's definitely shady, and there's nobody else. There's nobody else to pin it on, right? So you're like, okay. And so it's I don't even know what the mystery is yet, to be honest with you. Like, is there a bigger mystery? I guess the mystery is what happened on Brendock. I guess that's the actual mystery.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, if we find out that they just went in there and a fire happened and everybody overreacted, I don't know. Is that good enough? I don't know.
Yeah, Captain Wreck. That's a perfectly well said hot take there.
Yeah.
5 episodes in, we still have no idea what's going on. All right, so let's get a little bit into the stuff that we are enjoying, just so we don't bring the room. Sean, what are some of the aspects of the series that really really surprised you and really brought you to say, well, I'll keep going with this? And before that, I do want to say that my favorite episode has been episode 3, the episode that supposedly broke Star Wars. And the reason for me is I really like the different interpretation that the witches brought to the Force and Force lore. I found it interesting, and I know a lot of people were up in arms about the Force and how it was introduced, and Anakin and breaking lore and all that stuff. I don't think it breaks lore. I don't think it goes outside of that realm. I kind of equate it to different religions that have Christ at the center, but there's different interpretations of how Catholics see it, how Baptists see it, how other Christians see it. So I feel like there's real world examples of that. And I always find the Force lore, mystery and riddles, especially with characters within this universe, kind of interesting to me, because we do we start to see it in the prequels. We see it, we see hints of it when we talk about characters in Rogue One talking about the Church of the Force. So different aspects of the Jedi, the Lost Seven, and how they interpret Force. So I think it's to me, I found that super interesting on my part.
Do you think that we will get additional context around why, or if the witches are using the dark side? I'm always interested in this, like, dark side, light side. In EU, in absence of the prequels at the beginning, it was always like they waffled back and forth, and it really wasn't a good definition of it. And I still feel like, in a way, there isn't. Like, are the witches evil if they use the dark side? Does the dark side make them evil? Is it what they're doing? What if they don't? What if they're just doing their own thing, using the dark side, but not hurting anybody? Is that bad? Right? I don't know. I'm interested in this particular instance, and will we get more information about it? I'm hoping we do, but or no.
Yeah, and Ro, to your point, real quick, the comics do a really good job of illustrating the various views on the Force and how it's used. The second set of comics, which takes place in Phase 2, but it's actually a prequel to the Phase 1 books and comics. You have multiple sects on Jeddah who are practicing the Force, in various ways, right? And ironically, it's the Jedi who are actually looked down upon, at least in the story, because of how they're viewed as gatekeepers of the Force, right? Like, only a Jedi should be allowed to use the Force, right? And actually, there's a group called the Path of the Open Hand, which, yeah, you might be familiar with, right? Who didn't believe that anybody should be using the Force in the way that they do, and they create the Leveler, which for a Force user is one of the most terrifying creatures ever. So, I did, to echo your point, I did like that they brought that aspect of things, of different Force verbiage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different usage into what is traditionally Jedi Sith or dark light.
Sure. Going back to something that Ray said, there was a line, and I can't remember what episode it was, regarding the creation of the twins.
Mhm.
And somebody told somebody, wait until the Jedi find out, or we don't want the Jedi
Yeah.
to find out how
Yeah.
we created them. So it could be, the fact that they were created using the dark side of the Force. This might be the witches first, meddling with those dark side forces. And I did have kind of a theory regarding, when everybody was mad that they were claiming that the birth of Anakin, because of that episode, the birth of Anakin was deemed as not special. And I have a feeling that my headcanon theory was that these witches created life, and had the twins born out of the dark side of the Force. The Force answered by creating Anakin, who is to be the chosen one, and there is where the kind of the schism is created. Life from dark entity or the dark side of the Force is answered by life through the light side of the Force, which turns out to be Anakin. There was something happened in Anakin's journey to that, but we all know what happens. But I feel like it does not diminish Anakin's birth. At this point, I think Anakin is the answer to this birth, which is born from the dark side. That's my headcanon. We'll see what happens. But we are starting to get what Sean was talking about, a little bit of who can use the Force. There was a line in one of the trailers that said, it's not about power, it's about who wields it. And I think that is a very important line in the series, because we are going to start examining that aspect, because Kamir is talking to Soul about, I just want to use the Force and I don't want anybody to bother me. I want to be able to be free. I don't know how practical that would be. If he's going around killing people using the dark side of the Force, obviously, somebody's got to intervene at that point. But it is interesting nonetheless to see where the rest of the 3 episodes are going when it comes to, that mystery box.
Mhm.
Yeah, something. It's akin to saying the difference between saying, okay, we have to regulate food production, so you can't have a taco truck, right? I just want to make tacos. All I want to do is make tacos, and I want to sell tacos. But you can't. We're going to regulate that. You can't have that unless you go through us, type of idea. Or I want to cook meth, and I want to sell it to kids, right? Like the dark side guy is on the sort of cooking meth side, right? Like you wouldn't let that happen. But like, are the Jedi stopping the taco truck guys? Like, if you're just using the Force to do okay things, are they stopping those guys, or are they just stopping the drug dealers? The criminals, so to speak.
And that's an interesting question too, because if in that episode, the 3rd episode, you had the Jedis come in and say, we have a right to test these children. But who gave them that right? Why is it that they are the ones that are, like Sean said, gatekeeping?
Yeah, and they essentially said that they weren't allowed to teach. Correct? They were in the 3rd episode. I think there might be a little. It was I think they got cut off in the middle of saying it or something. But essentially, was like, you're not allowed to teach people the Force.
They were saying, we believe you're like training children, and they go, oh yeah, there are no children here, right?
Yeah.
And then right.
Oh, so, yeah, right.
Real quick, the headcanon thing with the Anakin's birth and everything. I think my theory, having listened to you just now, actually, is I wonder if Chimere was an experiment or something like that for the witches, and was the singular one, because Mayanosia, my thought is because of the yin and yang, and you see those symbols in Kelnaka's hut, right? And they actually, they get it on their forehead. And at the end of the episode in 5, Osha's all dressed in white and May is all dressed in black, just like the yin and yang, right? The balance, right? Like the two of them are the balance, right? But then you have that imbalance, which it's almost like Chimere knows May and Osha from, well, not, knows them from somewhere before, or when he sees her in episode 2, Osha, that is, he's like, you look just like it's almost like he picked up on something. I don't know what, right? But in a weird way, what if Chimere is the dark side, and Anakin was the balance, the Force fixing itself? That'd be interesting.
Well, you do wonder if you're saying that Chimere was a product of the witches, or whatever. I mean, you have the power of one, the power of two, the power of many. Like, is that like a progression thing? I think about it that way. But is it meant to be a progression? And I think it's a big question as to whether he's there 16 years ago or not. I mean, the actor is like 37, 38 years old, so it's possible he would be in his early 20s at that point. So it is possible. But yeah, I mean, was he involved? Was he not involved? My personal headcanon with the twins, and this is wild, not personal. This is my wild theory. My wild theory is that Mother Asaya had a twin herself, and they sacrificed her as part of the thing, and then she was essentially reborn as the two twins. That's my personal crazy theory for where the twins come from.
The fact that we can screenshot images from the internet when the shows play is very advantageous. One account, Sarah Palpatine, had screenshot a couple of images of those symbols in Kalnaka's ship or whatever. And it did kind of look like an embryo in the center with the circular things going. So the first thing that I thought of when I saw that was, again, a child born of the Force. And if that's the case, I mean, one question obviously is, why are these symbols in Kalnaka's dwelling? Why they didn't allocate another 2 million to show us that fight? That's another question I have. But yeah, it's I almost feel like 8 episodes of the series is not going to be enough. Same thing that I felt with Ahsoka during the last episode. It just seemed like everything was just rushed and jammed into that last episode, where in the middle there were 3 episodes that probably could have been like an episode and a half. So I hope they don't do that with this. And, I hope that the series kind of, ends on a note where a lot of these mystery boxes are either, gotten rid of or satisfied, in a way that makes sense. Again, getting back to characters that do things that don't make sense. The whole motivation of May, who is, at the beginning of the series, she's trying to kill all the Jedi that were there 16 years ago, and then finds out that her sister's actually alive, and then she changes, which is fine. So Chimere and Shay are getting ready to hunt Kalnaka on the forest planet, and she says, "I can't believe my sister is a rebel scum." And she's like, still, gung ho to go and kill this Jedi Wookiee. And then all of a sudden she changes and says, I'm going to turn myself in. But then later on, she has the opportunity to turn herself in, but she doesn't. And she goes and finds her sister again, and they hug, and they're like, "No, come with me." And then Osha is trying to arrest her, and then they start a battle, and it's a little frustrating to try and figure out, like, why is she doing this? I don't see like any hints of why her motivation is flip-flopping again, other than mediocre writing. And I don't want to kind of clump it to mediocre writing until the series is done and see where the writers are going with this. But I think, we're going to get some answers. There's still another flashback episode that I think we're going to get next week. We're going to get another point of view of what happens with the fire that Billy Joel started on that planet. Thank you very much for that one. But yeah, so it's a lot of questions, and again, a lot of mystery boxes that that for me, aren't kind of adding up to a hell of a lot. There's a and really, at the end of this episode, I hope they really don't stick with the switcheroo trope that they presented.
Yeah.
I think I had posted that the tracker is going to figure it out and not a room full of Jedi, which to me is kind of a weak ass argument. But I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
I don't think they can make it back to Coruscant. Like that, I think, you want to talk about plot holes, like how this doesn't get communicated, right? That's the question. If this individual is the true Sith, right? Which you asked a question earlier about what I liked, or what we liked about things, right? And I will say the combat sequences, the fight sequences have been, from the hand-to-hand combat, I love it. The saber combat sequence, even though it was a little bit dark, kind of hard to see, obviously it was night. That was great. It was really, really well choreographed. I love the fact that they brought the cortosis material into this usage, right? It was already in canon, but using it in the manner that it was, and the fact that was the material that Bane was forced to mine on Apatros and tying it into that whole thing. I thought that was really well done, but yeah, I don't know how Soul doesn't pick up on the fact that it's not the life force that, Osha, right?
Right.
She looks one way in the Force,
sure.
right? Because the Jedi view the Force in different ways, whether it's a fire or an ocean or a song, the way that Avar does in the High Republic, right? Like he knows what she looks like in the Force, and I realize he just got stunned, but you're telling me that she's not giving off some sort of weird vibe,
right?
Before you take it kind of goes back to the questionable storytelling, which is unfortunate because the bulk of this episode, again, I thought was pretty solid. And then you're gonna be like, okay, Basil's gonna find him because Pip fell out of the sky because he killed the Umbara moths, which were actually pretty cool. I
don't understand. It's funny too because when they were trying to get back to the ship, Yord had his lightsaber on, and Osha said, "Oh, turn it off. They're attracted to the light." And Yord goes, "Who? What are you talking about? Wasn't he in the scene where Soul figured that out?" It almost seems like the writers forgot that they wrote that.
Yeah, I mean, he was in the forest when Osha woke one up. So
yeah. I wanted to ask you about the cortosis material. I did find it really cool, but I almost expected a little bit of exposition to explain it to us as an audience, especially the audience that is not familiar with the material, because it did. I'm not a big EU reader, or I don't know. I don't pretend to know the EU as deep as I do, some of the other stuff. So I had no idea. So when these lightsabers shorted out, I'm like, did he just cut one of them in half and that's why they're off? But I'm not sure do the Jedi know what this material is? And if so, you would think that they would communicate to each other and maybe, do a scene where they have exposition to strategize on how to defend against this and then mention the name. I think it's weird to actually introduce that and then not have a little exposition. The only reason that I knew it was because other fans that did the homework posted it and said, "Oh, cool, cortosis it's in the show." I'm like, "What the hell is that?" So it's a little odd to me. And again, it probably would have, another minute and a half, a little bit of exposition would have helped to make the episode a little longer and again make sense in the overall scheme of things. But I don't know.
Yeah, the cortosis usage, I can't take credit for that. I actually saw that somebody posted a wiki leak on it, but or a wiki page on it. However, when I saw it, I was like, why does that sound familiar? And it says Apatros on the where it was mined, and I was like, and then it clicked because I recently went through the whole Bane trilogy, which is awesome. If you haven't listened to it or read it, it's a wonderful story. So, but yeah, to have that tie in to Bane, which, the theory, or one of the theories is that if he is a Sith, he's coming from that lineage. I don't know. That was a really cool aspect because I had no idea what was going on. I was like, oh, they ran out of batteries.
Yeah.
Go down to local Walgreens.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I also didn't understand it at first, but I think absent them talking about what it is, I think they used it enough within the episode that by the end of it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get what's happening. Okay, the lightsaber hits the helmet, now it shorts out. I don't know why. I don't know, is it some sort of fancy Beskar? But, I get that it's something. I was a little confused. I was confused when Osha tried to stun him, and it kind of went away, and it kind of was like hitting his shoulder, I felt like, not necessarily the helmet. And I was kind of like, okay, was that the helmet? Is he just like too cool to be stunned, or what's going on? But I assume it's just the helmet.
Yeah, and what is it with carrying a stun gun? I mean, can you go get like a real gun? Like, why is she carrying this stupid stun gun that actually has no effect on anything?
It's because the Jedi only carry stun guns and lightsabers. I think that's the thing, right? In that time period, maybe that's what. I'm surprised they don't have body cams too, because that kind of seems to be they're like the FBI of the Republic. I feel like so. Yeah. But that's what I figured. They just don't carry blasters because they're lethal and they're not in keeping with the whatever.
Well, and they're an uncivilized weapon.
Yeah. That's right. That's true. All right.
That is true. Yeah.
I'll buy that. Yeah.
Hey, Ro, do you mind real quick on May and going with Soul? I assume that, listen, May's being built up unless what we saw in episode 3 was not true about her saying she wanted to kill her sister. She's possessive. The very definition of like the dark side, right? She has a possessive streak when it comes to her sister. And so I think when her sister rejected her at the end of episode 5, she basically was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go kill the people that took her away from me, right? She blames Soul specifically for that. So I'm wondering if he's never going to get off planet because she's going to try to kill him before they ever get anywhere. That's my sense of that's all going to go down before they ever take off. I don't know if that's really true or not, but that's my sense of it. Now, why he doesn't know who she is, I could see the tattoo on her forehead after she was pretending to be Osha. I kind of feel like I could see that as she's walking with him. So I don't really understand how they can fake that. But so maybe he does know. But I agree. I think Basil's going to be the one to kind of tip everybody off. But I don't think they're going to make it off planet.
Yeah, it's just a little rudimentary, storytelling wise. I don't get it.
Do you? I have a question for you guys, and I don't know if I missed it in the episode, but did we see Osha get hurt? Because Smilo heals her at the end, right? Doesn't he force heal her?
Yeah.
And I don't remember her getting a wound.
May force pushes her off that little cliff, and I assume that she hit herself going down.
But storytelling wise, wouldn't you show it so that she's hurt so that you can do the heal? It's weird to show something you don't see. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you're going to get to this, Ro, but that scene is where the last time you hear the Kylo Ren theme, right? So I don't know if we're going to talk about the Knights of Ren piece, but it's interesting.
Yeah, we're kind of in that neighborhood. I think I missed it the first time around. Obviously, I usually watch these episodes twice, once for the visuals and then second for the content. So I did miss it. I think it's interesting that they threw it in there. Obviously, there's all the theories that they're setting him up as Ren, as the first Ren, which. Somebody had posted that theory, and I think actually maybe it was maybe it was Loki Jarson on Twitter that said that they're setting up the actual Knights of Ren, the first Ren, but then they don't do anything for 150 years until they show up in the Force Awakens, and then at this point who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So it's and that's, I think, the danger when you come to these stories and you realize that a lot of the plot points here lead to stories that we already know, especially in the sequels, that for whatever reason hit or miss depending on what part of the neighborhood you live in.
Look, my two big pet peeves are short episode length and prequels. I'm really tired. Like, if you could lift the Acolyte, move it to post sequels, put it and then make it New Jedi Order, and you could still have relatively, I mean, you'd have to massage the story a little bit, but then you don't know what's going to happen. Who is this? Who are these Sith people? What's going on? What's like the stories they could tell? I thought the same thing about the High Republic when they announced the High Republic. I'm like, why don't we tell these stories in the future? Like, why aren't we telling about cool Jedi that could exist post Skywalkers that we don't know what's going to happen to them? But because we know what all this leads to. It leads to Palpatine. It leads to the Palpatine becoming a Skywalker. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and that's the problem that the Mandalorian had. We still had, Snoke's in a jar every so often, or mention about, the some of the elements of the sequels. So yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing, going back to what I said at the beginning about how, it completely forgets about where it comes from in as far as like the timeline's concerned, because they could have easily gone back and put in, they could have used a familiar enemy from the books and the comics, or they could have used something that is completely unaffiliated with the Sith, or the Knights of Ren, if that's the direction they go. But again, the fact that they completely forget about the Nihil, who, in my opinion, is one of the greatest adversaries of the Jedi, non-Force using, certainly. I mean, they just wrecked people in the stories. And I know you said you kind of got bogged down in the first book and you only made it through a book and a half. The Rising Storm, the end of the Rising Storm, the Republic Fair, and all the stuff that goes on with the Nihil just annihilating people. It is, and so they're like, oh yeah, they prospered for centuries without war. I'm like, baloney. That's BS. That's a huge load of BS. So they could have totally picked a different adversary and had it not affiliated, had it stand alone and been, a proper High Republic era story.
Right.
It seems to be a bridge story, right? I think that's what it's going to end up maybe being. It's the bridge to the prequel sort of Sith ascendancy era. It kind of feels to me is what they're trying to do. I don't.
Yeah, and it's funny. We'll put up this comment. This show could have been an adaptation of the Plagueis novel, and Palps would have been the Acolyte. For everything that they are swerving around to avoid. Because I'll give Leslie Headland credit for bringing in a lot of like expanded universe, little tidbits, little storylines, elements like the helmet, Baz, his species and stuff like that. They're bringing in like some deep cuts from other Star Wars material into the show. But I feel like, if they would have used a broader stroke, I think this show would have been a lot better, not only in the narrative, but probably in the acceptance of some of the fans, because you're bringing in those fans as well into this adaptation. And obviously it's always a dangerous thing to kind of bring in, adaptations that we've known for years, especially during the expanded universe, 80s, 90s, all that stuff, and make sure that you do it right. But I feel like maybe those elements might have worked out a little better because, the characters have been established. The scenarios have been established. A little tweak here and there might have been, what the doctor ordered. But, as much as the little things that they are bringing into the expanded universe, these bigger elements are being sideswiped or changed or whatever for whatever.
I have a lot of there's a lot of irony, or in my opinion. I was a big EU post Return of the Jedi EU fan, right? Zahn and all that stuff and all that. And when the prequels came out and they started to write the other, it was all Clone War stuff. It was, you got Plagueis and everything. I didn't really get into those. And what I think is interesting is, I mean, as far as they already wiped my EU out. They wiped it out with The Force Awakens. So I don't know why anybody who loves the Plagueis novel would think it would be anywhere near canon. Like it's they will do what they want to do with it, right? It is going to be different and not just maybe a little different, but like completely different, like different Darths, different species, different everything. All you need is a guy named Plagueis and Palpatine. That's all you need to get to, right? Like it can be absolutely different. Everything else can be different. And I think everybody should accept that it probably is going to be.
Sure.
Because they haven't held true to a lot of the a lot of the EU otherwise. I don't think, unless I'm not aware of all of it, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to say join the club, but like it's all, it's all been kind of wiped out. But yeah, I mean, I listen, I hope, apparently going in these last 3 episodes, it's like a whole new ball game. That's what they're saying, right? It's a whole new thing. And I really hope that we get a clearer idea of how does this guy connect to what we know of as the Rule of Two and the Sith Lords? Like, is he the Sith apprentice? Is he not? Is he a Ventress type guy? Was he an ex-Sith apprentice? Like, exactly I could care less about the twins, to be honest with you. Like, they aren't even really the interesting thing to me. This guy's interesting. Like, how does he connect to everything? And hopefully we get some more clarity there. I mean, a lot of people's pet theory is that, 5 minutes left in the last episode, the actual Darth is going to show up and just kill him and be like, okay, we got to wipe everybody out because we got to go back and hide. You know what I mean? We can't be exposed. That's a lot of people's theory on Twitter, and I think there's potentially some validity to that. But it'll be interesting to see, and I hope we get a lot of good clarity.
And I hope that if that happens, I hope that that last scene, the reveal, will blow everybody away.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might go a long way in fans' minds of acceptance, maybe, because if it's all leading to that, and again, something like this, if that does happen, probably would have benefited from an all episode drop all at once, because then you see the whole thing, and then all of a sudden that last scene is like, oh wow. But right now I think we're as fans, I think we're all complaining about the minutia and all the little details that may or may not really matter in the grander scheme of things, especially in the way that they're telling the story. It's a little, like I said, it's a little clunky. A lot of mystery boxes are being thrown at you that I bet you like 85% of them are just distractions, which kind of dilutes the story from my point of view. I don't know.
I think when you have Jedi, right, and I've said this on Twitter, I think that there's a challenge when you're writing a story about Jedi, because Jedi are like Catholic priests, and Catholic priests have about 2 different types of stories you can do. You can do an exorcism where they're fighting the devil and they're the good guys, or you can do they're tempted, like usually by a woman, right? They're tempted to they lose faith, crisis of faith. Like those are like the 2 stories you can tell about Catholic priests. And I feel like the Jedi get stuck in that same mode. Like Saul, for example, he's losing until he embraces the dark side, right? Let's what we saw in episode 5. He got mad, he embraced his anger and his passion, and he started kicking that guy's ass, right? And he was going to chop his head off, but he was stopped. And I guess the chopping of the head off would have been the full sort of embracing of the dark side. But like, that happens a lot with Jedi. They get mad. Obi-Wan Kenobi got mad when he fought Maul. Luke got mad when he fought Vader. Like, and I feel like it almost undermines what the Jedi are supposed to be able to do without getting angry. So I forget what my point was in the way I started down this line, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And I know what I was going to say. I think that they could have done more with the character. What makes the Jedi interesting is their characters, understanding their motivations, right? And so you have to kind of have that next level down. You need to understand their emotional state. You need to understand what's going on under the surface to kind of make it interesting, because they're so sort of like stoic on the face of things. And I feel like the show could have done more. I don't know if you guys are aware, like in Game of Thrones, season 1 was being made way back in the day. When they first cut together, after they had to redo the pilot, when they first cut together the first season, they realized that they didn't have enough. The episodes are coming up short. And they went back, and that's why you have all these 2-person scenes in like sitting in a room talking. It's just them talking. They found out the actors they had time, they could schedule. They got them in a room. That scene with Cersei and Robert Baratheon, the king, where they're talking about their marriage. All that stuff is like, we need to fill in time for the episode. But that's why people loved Game of Thrones, because it was so rich with the characters. It wasn't just a bunch of swords and people riding horses and doing whatever.
Sure.
And I feel like Star Wars could benefit from maybe saying, hey, it's okay to be slow a little bit. It's okay to, Andor did a lot of that, right? Like, let's have Mon Mothma in a room with Luthen talking about things. Like, that's compelling when it's compelling.
Sure. Yeah. And sometimes like, I will admit that the lightsaber, especially Jackie and the bad guy, was really great. It was really, really well done. But again, a lot of the battles in this episode for me were just kind of like ho hum, didn't really care about the characters to begin with. And I think, I posted that still in my book, the prequel fight between Kenobi and Maul still reigns supreme. Not only is it well choreographed and brutal and fast, like George says, faster and more intense, but it meant something because of the motivations of the characters, especially after the death of Qui-Gon. And you see Obi-Wan's determination, like he was ready to kick some ass. And again, it's because of the fabric of the characters that we're on a journey at this point in their existence, that we're on this journey with them, and it means something to us, and because it means something to them. And at this point, again, more than 60% in, I'm on this journey, but it doesn't really mean much to me.
Yeah. Going to that story, or to that fight scene real quick. The thing that bothered me, I think, most about this episode, and touching on the Phantom Menace Duel of the Fates being, top level, is the degree, like the Soul and Jecki fight with Chimera. I feel like they were trying to like have that be effectively like the Duel of Fates, right? It's the same concept, right? Master Padawan taking on,
I can see that, yeah.
Lord, right? And then you have, excuse me, the same. It was like Revenge of the Sith, also, right? With Palpatine just, wiping through, and you have the single, Mace and Palpatine fight, and then Mace is about to win, and Anakin is the one to stop Mace, right? But in this case, Osha is the one to stop Soul. It was basically like they took the two, with the Battle of Heroes fight being like probably, the third best, right? Or not the third best, but completing the top 3, like that. They took 2 of those duels from the prequels and tried to shove them in here and give it the same level of emotion, and you don't get it because, you're starting to like Jecki, right? And I didn't expect them to go that far, although I guess people complaining about single lightsaber stabs not killing somebody, they decided to triple tap her.
Yeah,
but
no, she's dead. Yeah.
I was like, I saw somebody say, you think she's gonna be okay? I was like, oh, no, probably not that time. But still, like, you get the emotion from Soul in the way that you got the emotion from Obi-Wan, right? And I wish they would have let Soul finish. I don't know where they would have gone with the rest of the story, but like in that moment, it needed to be that, right? Like, and they cut away from him and Chimera battling in the forest to watch Jecki fight May. I was like, no, I want to see them fight. Like, let me see them fight. Like, for the way that they built that story, or built that energy towards the end of that fight, and the way that Soul walks up and just, force lifts the saber, and he's here, and I'm like, yes, yeah. And then, we don't get that, of course. And it's just, you get to the edge, and we got Maul cut in half. We didn't get the satisfying end to the fight that we probably should have.
Yeah.
And I feel like every lightsaber fight battle, right, has a purpose, obviously, a narrative purpose. And I think most of them do a pretty good job of it. I will say what's unique about this one is that typically in the movies, they're not trying to kill each other, usually. Like, I mean, Vader and Luke weren't trying to kill each other. He's trying to turn him, whatever. Same thing in the sequels. You have that basically. That's the same kind of dynamic. In the prequels, I think you did have a little bit of that, but Anakin and Obi-Wan knew each other. They were brothers. Like, you have that sense. This was the first time you saw, like, this guy didn't care about these people. He wanted them dead, and he wasn't talking about it. He was just killing them. And I appreciated the viciousness of it. And I think it showed that. And I think the aftermath of it really is potentially, if they want to go this way, is around Soul's soul, right? Like, what does it do to Soul that he lost these people that he's close to? And listen, the Jedi love to talk about certain point of view, and they love to, but they're attached to these people. These kids, they raise these kids. They're attached to them. I mean, he's attached. He obviously was attached to Osha. Like, they're sort of lying to themselves in a way. Just go to therapy. Why don't you, like, figure it out? But it'll be interesting to see how he handles that. And if they want to, I saw somebody suggest that Soul might end up being the one. That's the Acolyte at the end, and that's far-fetched, but if you could see it, if the twins were to die as well and he were responsible, like, does he then just go off the deep end and he just can't find his way back? I don't know. But to me, that's the most interesting part of the story is the sort of like Khmer in his like, where's he coming from? And then Soul, and how does he handle all of this? And then maybe Vernestra, and how does she cover it up? Because she's covering that stuff up somehow. Somebody's got to cover something up. You had a bunch of Jedi die. I don't know how you. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because everything that you said has to be wrapped up in 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And really only 2 episodes, because next week we're getting a flashback. So we're not really gonna.
Are we gonna get a flashback? I was surprised episode 3 was not narratively bookended by current events. Like, usually they're like, you get some sort of like, somebody's thinking about it, and then it goes to the flashback, and then they're blah, blah, blah. You get the bookends. But they just literally just were like, we're not going to talk about the present. We're just going to talk about the past. Do you think, given now it seems like the setup is Soul's like, I want to explain myself. It seems like Darth Biceps probably wants to lie to Osha, potentially. Are we going to get bookending narratives? We're getting something like the Last Jedi, where we start to see 2 different versions within the same. I know I mentioned The Last Jedi. I'm sorry, but within the same episode. I'm curious.
I mean, I hope not. I think that whole from a certain point of view, I think kind of hurts the narrative, especially if you're not used to storytelling that way. It's a little confusing. I think really Star Wars should probably get away from using, too many flashbacks, because it's losing me.
It's a prequel of a prequel. It's like a prequel inside of a prequel, man.
Yeah. Sean, any other thoughts on all of this?
I mean, trying to think about where we're going in the last 3 episodes, right? So,
right.
We know, or we've seen, or at least I've seen some GIFs, or at least part of the trailer, right, where Kanaka is fighting Soul at some point, which has to be in the flashback, right? So the theory about Soul and why he's so emotionally attached, and we talked about it earlier. I want to know more about him. I want to know more about Khmer, and understanding where that emotion's coming from. There you go. That
would be awesome.
That'd be hilarious. But so having Soul, if he loses his mind, let's say, and he is the one that invades the coven and just annihilates everyone, perhaps because of the memories that he has of being taken from his family. He mentions that to Osha, right? And I don't know that that's necessarily an accident. I feel like there's something in that discussion with the young Osha at the end of episode 3. And then also the thing about how he would make sure that she never felt this way again. Like, I feel like there's something there that I'm hoping we get resolution on. Because it was clear from the episode 3 flashback that they did not die in a fire. Nobody was burned. No, that was not.
I think that they all drank the Kool-Aid.
It was a Heaven's Gate type situation, right? But
all the witches were wearing Nikes, black Nikes. Did you see that?
Yeah. So so where are we going, right? Like, you're gonna have Soul trying to get back to Coruscant. Presumably he's going to get chased down, right? We've seen that in the trailers too. Like, there's some sort of space, not battle, but you have to end it in a way that there's no possible way that any of this gets back to the council, right? And you talked about it, right, about Vernestra covering up, right? Like, if they take a beloved High Republic character and make her basically the cover-up person, like, I that would be just a terrible way to use that character. Now perhaps she dies at the hands of Chimera, I don't know, but it without knowing that there's a season 2, because we don't know, maybe it got canceled. I don't know how you tie up all these stories or all these arcs in 3 episodes and don't just completely blow open future plot plot holes.
Yeah, I think Headland is quoted as saying that season 1 has a definitive ending. She has ideas for mysteries for season 2, but I think this current, once again, I don't even know who the main character, who's the main character of the show that's just going to resolve, right? I don't know. We could end up with just Chimera. Chimera is alive and everybody else is dead. I don't know, or everybody's dead. Before, real quick, because you made me think of something. We talk about Vernestra and the cover up, whatever. A lot of people are talking about the orange or red dust, spores, whatever it is, that multiple times people fell face first into outside of Klonaka's hut. Do you think there's any validity to that meaning anything, or is it just literally just sort of something they wanted to have in there to make the environment interesting?
That's interesting, because I did notice on my second watch, that they did focus a lot on that one shot where Osha falls face first. You see, and it's weird because sometimes you notice when there's an effect, like a special effect, and when she falls and that orange dust comes up, you can tell that's kind of a little CGI-ish, because it's kind of like floating up. And then she turns over and she sees the dead Jedi, and that's what makes her go up. So I don't know what the meaning would be. What were your thoughts?
The theories I've seen online are that people say that it's a hallucinogen, or it could have been, or that Vernestra is going to use it as a reason to cover it up, to say that the Jedi went, killed each other or something like. I don't know. They went nuts, whatever it was. I don't know. it's far-fetched to me, but it was interesting though, because I was like, yeah, they did pay attention. When Kanaka's blade gets destroyed and Jackie puts it on the ground, it's stuck in that orange stuff, and it's like they hold on it.
Right. And it almost like, I don't know if I was imagining it, but it almost kind of like sizzled.
Yeah, it reminded me of the Upside Down in Stranger Things, the stuff that floats in the Upside Down, it's like the particles just sort of like are in the air. And yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting, and one of those things. It might just be like the Knights of Ren theme. Maybe it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, but it's funny though, because again, from my background in editing and stuff like that, you're right. They did hold on that shot a little longer than usual. And it's like why? Why do you want us to examine this shot or this substance? What is it?
Well, and this goes back to what you were saying, Ro, about the storytelling. If you have confidence in the storytelling, the storytellers, then you're kind of like, okay, they're holding on that shot for a reason. But I have no confidence that they just didn't do that just to do it, right? I like it might not have any significance. And that's where I kind of get into, I don't know whether they're foreshadowing. I don't know whether they're, what the mystery box is, it the mystery box or not. And that's what's been frustrating slightly about the show, not to get on the negative again, but as it ties together with kind of how you're trying to interpret the episode. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's a great point. You know, is it foreshadowing or is it bad writing? And we just don't know at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope it's foreshadowing, and like I said at the end of the episode, when Finn and Rose kiss, and we all get a big surprise. I hope that we chuck it up to wow, this was fantastic.
I do want to say, because we were talking about what we like about the show, we kind of got off onto we're just talking in generalities about different things. But I will say I appreciate the fact that Lucasfilm and Star Wars is trying to tell different stories, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not it lands, right? Whether or not it was perfect, whether or not whatever. I appreciate the fact that they're trying it, they're doing it, and that. Like I said, once it's all the way through, maybe you watch it and you go, okay, it does make the other episodes better. I feel like the 5th episode I started to like Jackie. Then all of a sudden, maybe I go back and watch it and go, okay, I like Jackie more. So maybe it's worth it by the time we get to the end of it. But I'm just glad that they're trying. Everything's not going to be an Andor. You know what I mean? And season 2 of Andor might not be like season 1 of Andor. Who knows?
Well, it's going to be better, Ray. It's going to be better.
I mean, listen, I appreciate what Gilroy's been doing on Andor. So I can't, and listen, I did not like, I was like, why do we need a show about Andor? Why do we need a show about some guy I already know is dead? And then I was like, Mon Mothma's in it. I know what happens to her too. What do I need to know? And then all of a sudden I'm literally sitting on the edge of my seat every episode. And I know these people don't die.
Yeah.
I don't understand how, but anyway, that's good storytelling, but
Sure. Sometimes it's not about the destination; it's about the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, we may find at the end of this that it's like we do get a couple wows in it. I mean, we got Vernestra from the High Republic. That's cool. Like we're going to see a purple lightsaber whip, which is cool. That's great. We got Cortosis. We've got different things. Like I think all that's really, really cool. And to your point about the Force, the different aspects of the Force sects, like the idea that there is more out there and those people are more out there. And I kind of hope, listen, I hope when we get the Rey movie, if we ever get the Rey movie, I kind of hope we go back to this idea that the Jedi have been gone essentially for, 60 years, I don't know, 60 years or so, right? Whatever it is. The Palpatine, the Empire's been gone for 30 to 40, maybe 45 years, essentially. There's been a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be all kind of weird Force sects and peoples and things going on that in the Star Wars galaxy hopefully is in a state of somewhat chaos. And so the Jedi have to come in not being, like the High Republic, the people who get to go, I can go test your kids however I want. No, I'm going to take them too, and you're just going to have to deal with it maybe, and whatever. That they literally are sort of like now they're scrounging with everybody else, and they've got to figure out how to bring peace and justice. I hope that's the tack they take, and I think it'll help. It would help pull kind of this show into that same line as you go across the timeline of Star Wars, where we saw it way back, and then it kind of dropped off as the prequels and the Jedi, and then the Empire obviously was stamping everybody out, and then you kind of get to the other end. But that's my hope.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on episode 5 of the Acolyte? I think we covered a lot of our takes, our interpretations, and some of our likes and dislikes. If you want, we can go around the board, and then out of 10 pips, how many pips would you give this episode, Ray?
Probably 6. I'm going to give it 6. I think it's not even a full episode, right? I mean, you have to tag 4 onto it for it to even really make sense, really. But I mean, the fighting was awesome, right? It was awesome. You can't deny that. Kamir was good. I think the way that he presented himself as the Sith versus as the bumbling, guy was great. I mean, he had an intensity to him that matched soulful intensity, right? So I think those are the 2 anchors of the show in general, and I thought it's good to have them finally face off. What has me invested in the show more now is that they have beef, right? These guys, they have something now. Like it feels like Soul wants to figure it out. So I feel like it's there in a way that wasn't there when I didn't understand who Torben was, or who, Trinity was, or who these other people were. So I'm excited to see what happens in the last 3 episodes. Whereas in the episode 4, I was kind of like, meh. So that in of itself is great that it turned it around. I wish we'd have seen more Yord. I thought he was an interesting Jedi. He was a rule follower, and I don't think he was presented poorly as a rule follower, really. Stiff maybe, right? But like he wasn't wrong, and if he'd have followed the rules, he'd be alive.
Mhm.
So, I think that too bad for Yord. I mean, he should have followed the rules, dude. Again. But anyway, yeah, 6 out of 10 for me for this episode.
All right, cool. Excellent. Sean.
Yeah, I've got it at about 6.5. For much of the same reasons. It probably would have been a lot higher had they kept the episodes as one.
Yeah.
Just because it wouldn't have been felt truncated. But yeah, much to Ray's point, the buy-in for me going forward is to really find out what actually happened on Brendock and what did Soul do and why did Torben have to take the Barash vow, and which I know they don't do a very good job of explaining what that is, right? But that's the ultimate like vow of silence for a Jedi, right? Like you've done something so horribly bad that you basically all you care about is your connection to the Force and you don't do anything else, right? Like, and so but yeah, like what, we thought we were doing the right thing. Well, that doesn't sound good. And so I'm bought in for the last 3 episodes, basically because of this, the way that five finished. So really hoping it finishes on a strong note. I don't think it's going to finish on a happy note. But I also don't think the story is meant to do that. And so if it finishes in the sort of dark, moody way that we expected it to, I'll be pretty happy.
That's cool. Yeah. I don't think it's going to finish on a high note as well. Last episode I gave it a 3. I was super disappointed. Obviously, for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons is like 30 minutes in it ends, and I'm more like, oh, damn it. This week, obviously, we get the conclusion of that episode, and I want to give it. I would like to give it 6, but again, I'm going to give it a 5 just because it was also a short episode. I think the lightsaber battles were cool. I think some of the stuff that we are seeing as far as characters that are doing things that may not make sense at this time in the story are still bugging me. I think they towards the end of the episode they set up a weird little confusion mystery box that I don't think is believable in the scenario that we're going to embark on. But we'll see what happens after, if we're going to get a full flashback episode next week or a partial flashback where we just see some stuff that's happening. I'm always excited to see new Star Wars. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm definitely always excited to talk to other Star Wars fans about it. Obi Sean and Ray Richards, thank you guys for joining me on this episode. And not your first time here on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast for both of you, but definitely fun times. Ray, why don't you tell folks where people can find you to say hello there?
Yeah, so I'm just on Twitter at Raygun Richards. That's where you can find me. Excellent.
Sean.
Yeah, and you can find us at Force Dyad Pod on Twitter or Twix, and Force Dyad Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, come chat, and you can listen to us on all your streaming podcast platforms. So. Yeah.
Perfect. And we talked to your co-host. We have to get you on a Sentry mode, our quick 5-question Q&A little quiz segment, which is a lot of fun. So let's make that happen. Thank you everybody in the chat for joining us on this edition of the Scarif Live Show, Saturdays here at 7:00 on the tubes. Also on the Twitters that folks are watching us. Thank you very much for watching us there. And if you want more nerd content from the Red 5 Network, head on over to bio.link/Red5 and pick and choose your favorite content creator from the Red 5 Network. We've got a whole bunch of us waiting to be listened to and watched. All sorts of deep dives and reviews and and tips of the trade and all that wonderful stuff. If you guys want to leave us a voicemail at the Scarif hotline, that's 773-234-8659. Leave us a voicemail about anything you hear on the show or any of our takes here tonight. Would love to listen to what you guys have to say. Until next time, Sean, thank you very much. Ray, we'll see you guys out there in the Twitterverse. That is the Scuttlebutt, my friends. Talk to you later.